And thank you for tuning in to this unedited, exclusive interview with Vice President Dr. Jagdeo. And you know, from time to time we do this with the intention of government bringing transparency to the people. I ask the direct questions, the things that you are interested in. And we are here once again to do what we have done many times before. I'm hoping this will be edifying to you. Dr. Jagdeo, thanks for this opportunity.
You're welcome.
Once again. A lot of Guyanese citizens are confused as a result of the misinformation being spewed by the Stabrook News. Kaichur News takes the lead on that.
Yeah.
Obviously, after a number of years, it is becoming evident that Mr. Glenlal has an agenda. How can government, in the best interests of educating the populace, counter these kind of issues and bring clarity to the citizenry?
So, transparency is an important issue, and I think that any government should ensure that the organizations that promote transparency, and that could include, when I say organizations, I mean the opposition, members of the media, the NGOs, etc., that they're healthy and you have a robust intervention on their part to ensure that government remains vigilant and that they follow the rules. So a healthy society will have these bodies. But in Guyana's case, what we have is a series of organizations and media houses that are not interested in transparency, although they profess themselves to be very much interested in transparency and that they're the champions of transparency. I will not put the Stabrook News in the same category as Kaichur News. Stabrook News tends to be more reasoned, and even when occasionally we disagree with them, they on articles, etc., I don't see it as a campaign of misinformation. And often their articles are based on what people say to them, which could be misleading, but it's our job to respond and correct that. They don't fabricate the stories the same way like Kaichur News would do. Kaichur News has been built on sensationalism and fabrication. You can sensationalize the news, and that's fine, because people have to sell newspapers, you have to make money. But when you start fabricating, making up the news, misleading people, then there is, no matter how much a government tries to address your concerns, and we've gone overboard in trying to address the real issues that sometimes the Kaichur News will bring to our attention. But they're not interested in answers. They're more interested in making up stories. And so we see a big pattern of this. And the last few weeks have been an example of how this has manifested itself in the country. It's very hard for government to address a madman sometimes. You know, somebody who, like the Kaichur News publisher, he's so ignorant of many of the technical issues. But the sad thing is that he's not aware that he's ignorant. That he doesn't know. And the worst thing in this world is when a person believes that he knows what he's talking about, but he has no clue. For the whole country, it becomes like a joke, but for him and a few people who believe in conspiracy theories, this works for them. That it's very hard to address that sort of thing. But I'm not sure that you may have specific issues that you want to address.
In relation to Kaicho News, Dr. Jagdeo, Kaicho News basically started a campaign, Glenn Lal to say, because I worked there once, and Kaicho News is manipulated into this action by Glenn Lal himself. And once started a campaign against a Chinese company, Baishilin, who was doing a lot for communities. They mightn't have been the most perfect company, but a lot of people lost their jobs in the hinterland communities. Glenn Lal once started a campaign against the Marriott. Now the Marriott is one of the most successful hotels. A campaign was started. In most cases, anything, it seems that Glenn Lal is anti-development. So it creates a frustration in the society that people are trying to figure a way out. A lot of times, it's clear as day what the government has done as it relates to minimizing the effects of the global inflation on our society. But because of these cries, because of the fact that government, as a matter of fact, is the biggest advertiser in Kaicho News, the biggest funder of Kaicho News, one has to ask, when will it stop? Because it creates frustration. It might be even creating depression.
But it will never stop. This guy has a mental problem, serious mental problem. And he believes he is a messiah, but he lives in a cesspool. So the same issues you mentioned, he destroyed the livelihoods of many of the people in Region 10 who relied on that company to buy wood for them, the small forestry operators there. He then had a big beef with Rusal, that Rusal was sitting on a gold mine. They had all these concessions from the government, and that they will never walk away from the country. The people walked away from the country. We lost nearly 900 jobs in the Kokwani, Aichuni area, the Linden Corridor again. I was on his show. I said to him, what's your problem with giving concessions to companies that operate in these areas? If you think it's a gold mine, we will give you every bit of concession that Rusal got, and more if you ask for, more. You create 900 jobs there, and we'll give you everything you want. Up to today, he hasn't responded to that. He has not, but that was a gold mine. Destroyed the livelihoods of people in that area. You mentioned about the things he was opposed to. He was opposed to the Berbice Bridge. He was opposed to the convention center. He was opposed to the stadium. The Marriott, he said, was owned by Jagdeo, and that it will be a white elephant. Can you imagine the duplicity of this guy when a couple months ago he said the government wants to sell out a cash cow, the Marriott he's talking about, the same Marriott that a few years back he was saying was going to be a white elephant. So because nobody holds him to account, nobody holds the newspapers to account. So what he does, now he's on this new campaign, he selectively, so he bullies his staff because he wants to write about a particular thing. And so they all have to toe the line. So they fabricate stories every day. I saw recently he said, Jagdeo said that they will renegotiate the contract. It was an interview I was doing on, I think it's on Jams TV. I was speaking about the elements of the contract. I said, we'll have to renegotiate a lot of these contracts because of the provisions that we had problems with. No ring fencing, a low royalty rate, the too much going to cost recovery, that sort of thing, no taxes. I made it clear throughout. If you go, I can show you 5 interviews in the opposition where I said the ExxonMobil contract, the Stabroek block, we are not renegotiating, but if ExxonMobil, they're a big shareholder of the Kanji and the Kaichor blocks, that although they have the old PSA, the one that we're opposed to, they will have to sign new agreements now. Recently, we have passed new fiscal terms. You know, the royalty has moved from 2% to 10%. We now charge where they had no corporate tax, now there's a 10% corporate tax. We've limited the size of the blocks, so there's no need for ring fencing provisions. And we've allowed only 65% to go to cost recovery. Those are the new fiscal terms of the PSA. Effectively, there were 10 agreements with the old production sharing agreements. All the remaining ones now will have to subscribe to these new terms. We've effectively renegotiated by just passing new fiscal terms, 9 of those contracts. And that is what, if you go back to my interview, I said we'll have to tackle those that were issued by the PPP2 in the initial years. And I explained why, when we were exploring why the benefits had to be so lucrative. But once you are de-risked, why it had to change. Taken totally out of context. Not a single place where he would say, Jagdeo has specifically said he'll renegotiate the Stabroek block arrangement. We would never find that. But he goes off and clips little bits out of context without giving the total picture and make it seem as though we're going back on our word. It is not so. But that is how he operates. That is how he operates. He fabricates stuff, misleads people. I saw recently this whole issue about the headquarters. And I did say in opposition that the headquarters building that they were building at that time was several times the price of the Marriott. That was exactly what I said. And that for the scale of operation they had, they did not need such a headquarter building. And that that headquarter building, if it continues in that format, we will not support it being cost recoverable. But what has changed? One, when they started that headquarter, when I said that, we were producing 120,000 barrels a day. By the time we get to the completion of the headquarters, we'd be producing 600,000 barrels per day. It has evolved from just a headquarter building to house staff. They have 250 staff now they're renting. That would evolve to 500 staff, 500 members, their staff members, most of which will be Guyanese that will work there. But it is now no longer just a headquarter building. It's training facility, it's the operations suite. The control center for all the offshore operations will be done in that same building. So the fiber optic cable will come from the FPSO's remote sensing every minute of the day. You can shut down operations offshore from just this control center, a whole range of things. It's not just a headquarter anymore. To manage a million barrel industry where we're heading, $1 million barrel per day industry, from a safety perspective and operational perspective, you need a building of that nature, high-end building, also with advanced capabilities. And so that has evolved. And now when you look at the cost of rental, the rental, it would approximate almost the cost of amortizing the building over time, because, and that comes from our share of their cost recovery too. So things concept evolve, but they made that look like, oh, it was different. If they've been building that just for headquarters, we would have maintained our same position up to today. Very, very different circumstances. The gas to energy project is another one.
Dr. Jagdeo, before we move into the gas to energy project, there's discussion, you just made mention of the percentages being raised from 2 to 10%. To 10%. What does that mean for the coffers in numbers, layman terms?
Yeah, that's significant. Once these projects get going, so no. Right now, once the new developments come, because it would not be applicable to the Stabroek block. So he goes around serially to ask, what about the next development in the Stabroek block, right? And there's a big difference between development in the Stabroek block that we made it clear. He has a campaign against the Stabroek block. We made our position known. We are not going to shut down. I think they want to shut down people like Glenn Lal and another set of people that we see being exposed from the NGO community. They made it clear they want to shut down the oil and gas industry. Like they shut down the opportunities for the people in Linden, in the forestry sector, like they shut down the bauxite operations in the Berbice River. They want to shut down the oil and gas industry. They made it clear. Melinda Janke and the others said we should not be producing oil. So they find that commonality. They want to shut it down. They don't care. They would make money. Glenn Lal would sell newspapers. At the end of the day, he could afford things. Doesn't give a damn about the country. That's their aim. Shut it down. You're never going to have. We work very hard to get people to explore. First of all, to explore for oil. We had to solve the Suriname border issue to lift the force majeure to resume exploration. They found oil. We're going to make the best use of this opportunity for our people. The funds garnered here would allow us to adapt to climate change, transform the infrastructure of this country, assist our people with raising educational levels, health levels. Right now, this year, we're starting 12 new hospitals. You know what's the cost of these 12 new hospitals? $600 million US. That's $120 billion that will go into healthcare alone for our people. That's where the money will go back. We can't be bothered by people like Glenn Lal and the others. His aim is to sell newspapers and to destroy industries, as he has demonstrated in the past. So we made it clear, we're not going to engage in a legal battle with ExxonMobil and the others over the Stabroek block. We don't want to slow the momentum. The moment you do that, you kill the momentum of the investments, because already 30 billion has been put in investments there, and over the next few years, maybe another 30 billion to get us to over 1 million barrels a day, where we would then enhance our revenues significantly. So we're unapologetic about fighting for the people of this country, ordinary people. We will fight Glenn Lal and all of these Trojan horses that get paid from abroad, sometimes these NGOs, to try to destroy people's livelihood and welfare. We're unapologetic about that. We fought a long time to bring this country out of the morass that APNU placed it in. Bad governance and lack of democracy. We fought very hard against many odds. No money. We had to fight street protests, all that sort of thing, and to emerge out of the that hole that they dug for us. You think we, having fought in the difficult times, you're going to allow a Glen Lal and the others to thwart our development efforts? I mean, it's never going to happen. Never going to happen, because we know who we're fighting for. It's the people of this country, all of them. Not Indo-Guyanese alone. All Guyanese. Not Hindus or Muslims alone. All religions. People of every gender. We're fighting for them. And often we're the only ones doing this in the People's Progressive Party. Just look around you and see what the political landscape looks like. Look at the other parties. They don't.
Dr. Jagdeo, on the point of NGOs, there have been a number of NGOs, and one would want to think they act, like the CIA of the past. A lot of surreptitious activity. The human rights organization, and I know you normally, pinpoint a lot of things. Something has come across me. I'm supposing it's come to your attention. Transparency Guyana was sending correspondence to Transparency International, and it's only come to light with the recent Transparency report that in 2019, contrary to what is fact, this is just a snippet of the report.
Yeah.
From Mr. Thomas, who was heading Transparency Guyana at the time. There has also been a number of positive steps taken by the new government, including a new government referring to the past, which is now opposition, the coalition government, making petroleum contracts publicly available. Now, Glen Lal, at the time, the government was about to change recently, he was still begging to see contracts, he was fighting to see contracts. Dismissing employees found guilty of corruption. That change from witch hunting to try to create a discipline for what was being done at the time. Since there was nobody who ever faced the courts or was found guilty of the charges brought against them after all of these audits. Halting. Now this directly relates to me, and it's worrying to read these things.
Yes.
Coming from Transparency again. Halting a major contract for parking meters in the city, which violated the procurement laws following protests by citizens.
Let me tell you, this is a huge problem that we have. If you look at the GHRA, they would write every day about transparency. They're on the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative Board. But if you look at the structure of that organization and its financing, it would never, and whether it's democratic, the office holders are freely elected, the turnover in the leadership, you will find that it is one of the most undemocratic secretive organizations in the whole world. They would never turn the spotlight inwards. And the Stabroek News and the Kaieteur News that are so enthralled with this whole question of transparency, it will do them well once in a while to turn the spotlight on these organizations. So we have the TIGI that was formed by a group of citizens, and we knew immediately, based on the people who created the organization, that it would be anti-PPP. You had a former Auditor General who was part of the APNU elections campaign and everything. They said he was part of their campaign, and a few others. So now we had the report this year, and if people have an opportunity to read this, they should go and read the report and go to Guyana and then click on, there's a link there, and it takes you back to a 2019 report by Troy Thomas. The report that you were speaking about. Now, if TIGI has any credibility, because they may want to distance, they will first of all distance themselves from that report. They should publicly announce that the report was factually incorrect. It was a biased report. Then it speaks a lot about their internal process. If the current leadership distances itself from that report, claiming it was this Troy Thomas, who seems to be a partisan, who was heading the agency, he seems to be PNC, based on that report. They have to say, how are these reports generated? Because the report has surveys. How are the reports generated? Does it go to their board? Not just the head of the agency sends it off. Does it go to their board for discussion? And if so, did that report go to their board? And then, shouldn't the citizens of the country see the report that they send up secretly to Transparency International to falsely influence them? To falsely influence. So these local organizations that are biased can influence an international body that believes that they have credibility to either score you higher or lower on an index. So the indices themselves become suspect. So we got scored higher in the APNU period on the Transparency Corruption Perception Index, because the report said they did a survey where citizens in the APNU period said there is less corruption in the government. I don't know where that survey, because in that period you had the tender board procedures were violated. That was the norm. That was the norm. That was not the exception. Every tender procedure. We have tons of the sale of land. We now have people charged for the sale of land without any valuation, without collecting the money. Title was transferred, like what Jordan did. We had the Patterson scandal with the bridge. We had a ton of if I can go along and list, I can list you 30 issues where ministers were involved in giving contracts to themselves in the ministry. $600 million missing from that, the Durban Park fiasco, that stadium or whatever they built there. It was the norm. More citizens felt there was greater corruption in that period, yet the local TIGI office sent up a report saying that people felt the new government, the PNC government, was not corrupt, less corrupt. Secondly, just the three areas you mentioned. One, they said that the government was releasing oil and gas contracts. Now, the country knew the fight we had to wage to get the oil and gas contract released. They bluntly refused to release it. Bluntly refused. We didn't have the environmental permits made public. We have now made public all the environmental permits that we have issued since we've gotten into office and the ones that they had issued. None of the licensing of the FPSOs were made public. We have made all of those public since we got into office. But Troy Thomas and the local TIGI report said APNU should be lauded because they released the oil and gas contracts. A lie. It's a big lie that he told in that report. Secondly, he said about the parking meter, that they reversed the parking meter. Now, they were the ones, you remember, Bulkan approved the process moving forward. It was a PNC cabal in the city council that organized this parking meter fiasco, and it was approved by the minister, and had the citizens of this country, and you were part of that major thing, not led the fight, nothing would have happened. So just imagine they're taking credit for a corrupt transaction, taking credit for transparency on a corrupt transaction. And this is aided and abetted by TIGI, the local office. And then the same report says they've resuscitated the Integrity Commission. This is so shameful. And I hope that the TIGI would review it, and that the Stabrook News will go and review that report too. That in the 3 years, from the year 2000 to 2023, now 2022 last year, every year we have had to submit our statements to the Integrity Commission. Every year. I became president in 1999. From 2000 it started. The law was passed, and we pushed it in place. Guess which years we have the gaps in? Under the 5 years of APNU, there are 3 years where nobody had to submit, because APNU refused, and to submit, they not only dismantled the secretariat. So you had a commission. Sometimes the commission was not operational, but the secretariat is operational, so by law you have to submit. They dismantled the secretariat, so you couldn't submit. The worst period in terms of non-submission to the Integrity Commission was under the 5 years of APNU, and the shameful Troy Thomas and the TIGI, they said they gave them credit, wrote Transparency International, the international chapter, to say that they should be given credit for resuscitating this, not for destroying it. I can go through a long list of lies. They have several of those in that report. Was a PNC could have written this report and given it to TIGI. But nobody speaks about that. There are lies there, total lies. You want to bet. You recall when Harman was seen in a plane somewhere in China, right, flying around. And people were raised, would you put that in your report with TIGI? They wanted to meet Harman to get his explanation. You have one issue with a PPP minister now, and you want to bet it's in a report? I've never seen Cathy Hughes, who was giving contract to ourselves, or the housing minister who was giving her husband contracts, ever part of a report. It's selective. Transparency in this country is selective. It's selective for Glenn Lal. He doesn't speak about the interest and his motive. He has a bunch of people, shady characters, and we have some things on them that would be made appropriate public at the right time. But they're going around misleading people, saying they're setting up an oil and gas organization, but they want to form a political party. They've had discussions with several people, including APNU, because they know AFC is dead. So they could become the new, like, AFC and stuff like that. And some of the most shady characters, and Glenn Lal is at the center of that. So, misleading people, lack of transparency there. You wouldn't hear about that, but they clamor about transparency in every single other area. So it is just, if we're talking transparency in the country, I believe that government has to be held to account. Has to be held to account. But you gotta look at the motives of the other people. APNU asked for the oil and gas contract. Oh, suddenly Patterson wants the oil and gas contract. Patterson stood up and lied in Parliament that APNU did not kill a miler. You recall what they said. They were, Glenlal was involved in it too. Oh, the fall would run dry, the river would run dry. Not that you have a reservoir there, but the river will run dry. That we were taking $2 billion or US dollars of debt to the Treasury. When there was zero debt to the Treasury, there was a $750 million of contingent liability where we are guaranteeing the payment, but a zero debt because it was a boot operation. We were buying power. A whole range of issues. Blackstone walk away. They then claimed that IDB was not supporting of the project from the beginning. IDB, throughout it, was supportive of the project, was going to raise $100 million for the project. The cost of power would have been about 10 cents per kilowatt hour. He claimed that he has a report that it would have been 25 cents per kilowatt hour. I've asked Gail Teixeira to write the speaker that if he cannot produce the report in Parliament that says that the price of power would have been 25 cents per kilowatt hour, US cents, he must face the Committee of Privileges for lying to Parliament, because they do that often. But there should be consequences for people like Patterson. One of the most shady characters and Minister of Public Works in our history. Shady, totally shady. And he suddenly has found his voice. But I have about 15 questions I'd like to ask him, but he's in opposition now, so he's irrelevant over there. So he then comes, they want the gas to energy project. Not, they want the documents. So I recall in our history, I just confirmed from Ashney because I was out. I said to Donna Ramatar, I said, don't give these people anything. They would kill the project at the end. They had great goodwill and Ashney and stuff. They met with them several times in the cabinet here with a team from the opposition. Gave stacks, over 3,000 pages of documents on their Milers Fall, from feasibility study to hydrology studies to environmental studies, design, costs, everything, contracts. They didn't use it to support the project. They saw it. I doubt any of them read the documents because they don't read the documents. And then they killed it. So they succeeded in that because they knew if a miler had taken off by 2017, we would have had cheaper power. It would have been a kudos for the PPP. They're worried that this gas to energy project would result in electricity prices being cut by 50% by 2024, 2025. And we'd have enough cooking gas to export cheap cooking gas. That's a big political impact. It meant we fulfilled the promise we made to people, cutting cost of living, cutting their electricity bill, reliable power. They want to kill it. It's the same thing. They don't want documents to support or to be edified, to learn, to be educated. They don't want to kill it. They want to kill it. So we're not falling into any stupid trap again. With these people, they're negative about everything. But you can only expect this from people who never had any plan for anything. They could have built the pipeline. They could have identified the site. They could have done a number of things. Could have built the four-lane highways and the bridges and stuff like that. They could have had a plan for healthcare expansion. Had nothing. Granger 10-point plan. You remember? I heard Norton went with a 23-point plan to Parliament. Oh, we must work harder. One of his plans, we must work harder. We must give more subsidies. That's not a plan. That's like you sit down one night in your toilet and write up a wish list when you're taking a dump. It's like, that's not how you run countries. And he has the audacity to bring it to the Parliament too. Luckily, I didn't have to endure listening to it. I didn't have to endure listening to this nonsense. But this is where they are. So I saw the next thing about, oh, Alistair Kerman spoke, and oh, we're buying gas. We explained many times that the gas to energy project, we are going to own 100% of it, the power plant and the NGL facility to process the gas. 100%. What is not clear about that? The government and people of Guyana will own that. We made it clear that we went out to tender several times. We pre-qualified twice. We then had bids in. The bids came in. Everyone saw the bids. We had a team from Stantec, a Canadian company, and another one from the UK to Worley to assess the bids for us. Then we put in place a local technical team. They assessed the bids. We awarded the contract to an American company for $759 million to build the power plant and the NGL facility. What's not known about that? What's not known about it? It's an open, transparent process that we did that in. Thirdly, we said we have paid already, we had in last year's budget, $100 million US dollars. We paid that as a down payment. The rest of the money, we are looking to raise a loan from the US Exim Bank on favorable terms to finance the project. That's clear. That's the component there. On the pipeline, we said we are developing this jointly with Exxon. We're financing it out of cost oil. So we have our share of paying back because it's coming from cost oil. So we have to pay back because it's not free. They're putting in some money. We have to put in some money. So we decided that over 20 years, say the pipeline is $1 billion. We don't know the exact cost as yet, could be lower, but we put a notional figure. $1 billion, how much money do we have to pay to amortize $1 billion over 20 years? And our share of that, Exxon has to put up 52% of that cost. We have to come up with 48% of it, right? So we come up with a figure, 50-something million dollars, that we have to pay yearly to amortize, to pay for our share of the pipeline over 20 years, to pay back for it. So we then decided we're bringing in Exxon saying, how are we going to work this out in an arrangement? So we took the figure to pay back for the pipeline, and we divided that figure by 50 million cubic. And so we say this is like the commercial agreement. It's not like we're paying for the gas. We're just, as convenience, taking the figure to amortize. That's why the Exxon man said there's no profit. But it's reflected almost like a gas payment. But we're paying zero for the gas. We're paying to amortize the pipeline. That's the exact figure. That it's because it's easier commercially for us to do that, to reflect it commercially. So that's simple. We're paying back over 20 years for 48% of the pipeline. Simple as that. So where would this money come from to pay? When we sell the liquids alone, and that is to the pipeline and to operate the pipeline with this fixing, that pipeline can't be picked up and taken anywhere else. It's done there. Once it's there for us, the country. So how are we going to pay for this? When we sell the liquid, remember we take the gas, we extract all the liquids, the cooking gas and everything else. At the current price, we will get enough money to pay back for our share of the pipeline, as reflected in the price of gas. And secondly, we will be able to even pay for the power plant and the NGL facility from just selling the liquids. So what happens effectively? We're financing this whole project from the sale of our liquids, which we're getting for free. We're financing the whole project. So you're practically getting electricity now, not just gas, electricity for free. And then we're selling it at half the price, current price, at 15 cents per kilowatt hour. So that's in a nutshell. That's it. Publicly we've said it's over. But they want to they want to complicate it because they want to kill it. Kill it. That's what APNU is all about, because they're worried it would have a big political impact. And they have somebody said, oh, the gas will make you impotent, the gas will explode here, everybody else in the world using it. In China using gas, China got the biggest population in the world. But here in Guyana, this will happen, all sorts of stupidness. Pure nonsense. You hear some of the lamest stupidity. I've never seen a country with such a high concentration of crazy people I'm not making general population, in a small circle. And they're every day incessantly in the papers about every little thing. You go and build a road there about it's something, but they would never do anything in their lives to improve people's well-being. We can't be bothered about them. It's not arrogance. It's just that we're fed up of people who try to destroy the future well-being of this country. And many of them have lived their lives. They don't think about the young people anymore. They've lived their lives. And we're never going to tolerate that. That's not what the PPP is about. And the government, Irfanali's government. We're not into that. We're going to fight them every single day. So you're going to have the misrepresentations. Glenn Lal cannot come off this. He's on a high. He lies every single day. And he doesn't, I think he starts believing some of his lies. He starts believing, and that's the worst thing could happen. You can't explain a technical issue to Glenn Lal. It goes over his head like that. And you just give an explanation, and then he comes back and asks you a question that you realize you wasted a whole half an hour of your life talking to this man. That's what's happening.
I've had the experience.
No, it's a frustrating thing. Not that I get frustrated easily. I've had to deal with APNU and all of these, and so I don't get frustrated easily. But if you try, you make an effort to give explanations all the time. But they come up with some set of nonsense. So you have a lot of people who talk the transparency talk, but they don't walk it. When you examine them, they don't walk the transparency talk.
Dr. Jagdeo, of recent, a few months back, the opposition were ahead with their antics and their attempts to create confusion. It seems for a short period of time, I don't know if it is being punched by the budget, but they've gone silent. Is the PPP having a free rein?
No. They're just, when they go silent, it's basically the racism message. As I said to you, the budget would have been about racism and all of that. Their responses in the budget. And so they go and mislead people. Everything is just misleading people, again, on the ground. So I don't know what they're doing, frankly speaking. I know they will continue to mislead the country, but we got to remain positive. If we allow these people to daunt us, then we can't address the development needs of our country with the passion that it requires. And the worst thing could happen in government is when you lose passion about what you're doing. That when you wake up in the morning and you just don't want to jump out of bed and go, that's the worst thing could happen for you in government. When the concerns of the people stop being a concern to you, it's time to wrap it up. And they've lost that a long time. But we can't allow them to demoralize us, to cause us to lose their passion for people and for their development. We've had a long, all in this country with very, very difficult circumstances and with a group of very negative people, negative about everything in life. And we have had to struggle through all of that to be where we are today, which is immensely, immensely transformative from the early days. Immensely.
Dr. Jagdeo, with a $781 billion budget, a lot of which are going for massive infrastructure
Yes.
projects, the gas,
Yes, exactly.
shore, the bridge, and so on. Do you see this year being a major transformation for Guyanese, where a lot of the people who are the lower levels moving up to the middle class? I know a lot of jobs are being created, lots of housing development. Do you see that coming this year?
The thing is that there is no magic one. You have to every year work consistently with a pattern in mind, with a clear vision to grow welfare and well-being. And that is what we're doing. So we know that it would take a couple of years to build these hospitals. But we know once they're completed, healthcare will be transformed in this country. Our people would be able to go in. We started working on getting the staff for these hospitals, high-end quality staff. So we are working not for the immediate, not for tomorrow alone, but I know by 2025, 2026 or so, when these hospitals are completed across the country, 12 new hospitals, you'd be able to walk in, you'll have a specialty hospital, your child has some serious problem, a cardiac problem, they go here and get a quality of care like you could get in the European Union or anywhere in the world. That's what we're working towards. So, and it takes effort to get there, but because we have had to pull together, marshal all the resources we've had to build out. I remember the early days, the hospitals were not functioning and stuff, and we didn't have money. We had to try to fix things up as best as we could to get it going. Now we are at the cusp of new, better, high-end facilities. Our people deserve that. So that's going to happen. On the housing side, you've seen that every year, family by family, one family at a time, we're giving them hope and greater. We can't develop 50,000 in the first year. We've done that. We made a promise in our manifesto. We're working to deliver that promise. But I've seen it, how people's lives are being transformed. They're owning their homes. They're starting to work. Not everyone. Just the community roads. I met a few people, and for them, just that concrete road in front of their home, that was a mud road, makes all the difference in the world. And we have so far done about 1,500 of those, and this year you have another 1,200, 1,300 concrete roads, that by the end of which you'd have families and the children going to school and everything, being able to walk on better roads. More and more people are working now in our country, getting jobs, etc. They're getting a job, they're getting more income, our children are going to get a bigger grant. So that's what it's about. We're not going to wave and shout, oh, we've solved every problem in Guyana. We have to work hard too. We have to properly marshal the oil and gas companies or other resources to see that we're utilizing them in the best interests of long-term sustainable growth. Not in a couple of years you do well and then you flop at the end of the period. So all of that is happening. And so the budget, a big budget, yes. But when you take out the big capital projects, you will see that we are still managing modestly, because we have to be careful we don't ramp up expenditure too high on recurrent side or other things. So you don't see, like if you go to an oil and gas countries. I've gone around the world. The first thing the people build is a new presidential palace. I've gone to 15 countries. We're still in the office of the president here. The gates, that, needs oiling and stuff like that a bit. We don't need that. We don't need these things. We're not going to splurge on things that don't create value. Our money is going into roads, education, healthcare, better infrastructure, power plants, creating jobs, helping our children, helping the elderly, helping the disabled. That's where the money is going. We're doing it modestly at the beginning, but it will grow. It will grow. So when those big capital projects are done, and we finish the next wave of capital projects, our budget comes back to a level where we can then, because we have built out a lot of the things we want to build, then you can spend more on the recurrent side, on people. But if you don't build out the big things, and everybody buying a car now, what's going to happen on our roads if you don't put in 8 lanes going up in the East Bank, or another 4 lanes on the East Coast coming in? Well, what will happen? The quality of life will also deteriorate. You can't think just like eating every cent up. That's why I said the APNU's economic is economics. Their economics were very different than ours.
Dr. Jagdeo, as we always do at the end of our interviews, reassurance to the people from all sides. The last time we had this discussion, you said you're not going to look past your support base, but continually, I meet people in the streets, and this happens every time. There's a hopelessness among opposition supporters, and I don't know why. Because, like, if you want to apply for a house site, you could go online. When you go anywhere and nobody asks who you are or who you're affiliated with, house lots are available for everybody. The funding that is given for school kids is available for everybody. So as a result of this
you want to know why people are negative too, even? Because if every day they hear on APNU programs, the PPP will discriminate against you. Don't apply for this, don't apply for that. They'll take away, they wouldn't give you housing. Why would you bother to apply? But those are the people who will never make progress too. That's why I urge APNU supporters. The government works for all the people of this country. I made it clear, we're not going to neglect PPP supporters, because if anybody believes we're trying to prove a point that we're going to neglect PPP supporters, and it seems as though PPP supporters, somehow there is this feeling that they're not eligible for anything. Look at the report that Nigel Hines and the others did. A lot of Indians are getting contracts. They're citizens of this country. If they bid for a contract and only Indians bid for the contract, then they should get, one of them will win the contract. But you don't have a problem. Not all Indians are businessmen or wealthy people. You have a lot of poor Indo-Guyanese who live in many parts of this country who need help, sometimes more than people who live in urban areas, because they haven't had access to water or good or electricity or good quality health care that we have here in the city. Should we neglect them just to prove a point? So we have made it clear, we are working for all of our people, regardless of their race and their religion. But we're not gonna do it in a manner where it's insincere, we're just trying to prove a point. I've been saying this over and over. We're not proving a point. If we're ever gonna prove a point, is that we're working for all of our people. That's the only point we wanna prove, that we're working for everyone. So we believe that a young Afro-Guyanese kid should get the same opportunities as a young Indo-Guyanese kid or a young Amerindian or a mixed kid or Portuguese kid. They're Guyanese children. We want to make sure they all get that. And people, whether they're sugar workers or rice farmers, that same report that TIGI spoke about how firing government employees and stuff like that. They fired the 7,000 sugar workers for corruption. The biggest haul, that's not transparent, see, that was the biggest act of discrimination against a particular community. Or the Amerindians, 2,000 of them. But you're never going to find that under the PPP. Because we're builders. We will try to create more jobs. Whether it's through part-time jobs or whatever, we're builders. We're not people who destroy things or use up everything that passes in front of us. The resources of the country. We've always accumulated. If you look at when we left in 2015, you had money, unlike when we took office in 2020, you had a healthy reserve. The country had several projects going. We had a high growth rate, etc. Because we're builders. And so this is it. We work. So I would say, if you want me to say again, message to Afro-Guyanese, our people. These are our people, they are Guyanese. That's it. That's important for us. That ignore the negatives. Your life, the same ones who are telling you don't seek out an opportunity, they're busy calling the ministers, the MPs, I want a piece of land here. They're MPs, or I want something. Don't fool yourself that they go in parliament and they beat their chest and behave like that and talk about discrimination. They're busy calling government to get help. A lot of them. And they would go out in your communities and tell you, oh, you just squat there. You know, you just go here. Don't get a house lot there, or like take the house like Maka they would tell the people. And then leave them in the problem. Leave them in a problem. When they get into problem, they just walk off. Don't believe those people. I've dealt with them for a long time.
Dr. Jagdeo, on that note, the positive note of inclusiveness and transparency, and letting the people know once again the present administration of which you're the vice president of is for all Guyanese. Yeah. I want to thank you for that, and I want to thank the viewers for tuning in, and I'm hoping this has brought some clarity to you once again. Thanks.